and introduce everyone to our interviewing and getting hired workshop. So we have leadership from HR departments and from various school districts in San Diego County, and I will let you introduce yourselves. So panelists, I'll invite you to do so just in the order that I see you on Zoom. Karen, do you want to go ahead and go first?
Of course, my pleasure. Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to be here. My name is Karen Hernandez, and I'm Director of Human Resources for the Sweetwater Union High School District. We are located in the South Bay region, and I guess I can give you a little more information as questions come up. And I'm going to mute myself because there's an airplane going over.
It's all good. Thank you so much, Karen. Amanda, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Amanda Silva, Director of Certificated Personnel in Cajon Valley Union School District. And so you're familiar with our area. It's the greater El Cajon area and the surrounding rural areas reaching out to the edge of Alpine, the edges of Lakeside, Santee, and La Mesa on both the north and south sides of the 8 freeway.
Great. Thanks so much, Amanda. Gary, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Gary DeBora. I'm the Director of Human Resources for San Marcos Unified School District. San Marcos is in North County, located where Cal State San Marcos is, kind of in between Escondido and Vista. So between the 15 and the 5 along the 78 corridor if you're going freeways. It's great to see everyone, and thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks so much, Gary. Tom, why don't you go ahead?
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Tom Bevilacqua, Director of Student Services in the South Bay Union School District, which oversees special education as well, and work very closely with HR in the hiring and recruitment for special education staff. We are the elementary feeder district to Sweetwater Union High School, so we are in Imperial Beach, parts of San Diego County or city of San Diego and the city of San Ysidro, so far southwest corner of the county.
Great. Thanks so much. And then Albert, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Albert No. I'm the Director of Certificated Personnel for the Escondido Union School District, very close to Dr. Gary's district, just a little bit east of Cal State San Marcos, but not so far that you go all the way to the Ramona Valley Center area. Nice to meet all of you.
Excellent. I think that's all of our panel. Did I miss anyone? I certainly don't want to leave anyone off. Okay. And we have been able to pin our panel, so hopefully that makes it easy for everybody to see as well. So we'll just dive in to some questions and you guys can just kind of popcorn and answer them as you feel that they are appropriate to you. Our first topic that we'll talk about is applying. So some EdJoin postings make it clear that interns are welcome to apply for the position and other postings do not make that clear. Should interns only submit an application for the positions that specifically ask for interns that are welcome to apply?
I'll go ahead and answer that. Oh, I'm sorry. Should we raise our hand? What's the protocol?
No, you're good. Karen, you and I were shaking our heads the same way, so you're good.
Yeah, okay, good. So we probably have similar answers, right?
Yeah.
So basically, you should never shy away from applying. In lieu of your credential, you can upload your letter stating that you have completed your program, and that will suffice. That'll get you in the door for an interview.
Thank you. Gary, did you have something to add?
Nope, ditto. Great answer. Apply to anything you're interested in.
Excellent. And I see lots of heads nodding, so we can agree there, I'm sure. This one may be a little bit more specific. What makes an application stand out in a pool of a lot of applications?
So I can say in Cajon Valley, because we're in the heart of screening many applications now, personalization is key. When we read the letter of intent and it's not personalized and the candidate hasn't shown that they're aware of our community and who we serve and what we're about. When we screen, and all other things being equal, a weak letter of intent that's sort of generic and just sent to everyone will cause people to fall lower in the screening ranks.
Yeah, I think that's great. Amanda, I got one today that said, thank you, Vista. So yeah, just make sure you got change the names on the letters. And I would also just add the letters of recommendation. I think say a lot, because when you have a lot of applicants to go through and try and understand who's applying and get to know you and things like that. And if one of those letters, you know, from your immediate supervisor, I think speaks to that as well. So the job you're doing. So I would add that.
I know for a lot of you, having experience may be challenging because you're just beginning, you're just starting. Really try to make those connections and tie-ins to your student teaching experience if you have any of that, or anything where you've worked with students and youth, and really try to tie in what skills you've built. Don't just say that you assisted with tutoring. Maybe you assisted with tutoring and you learned how to utilize scaffolding techniques, or how to chunk information, or you were tutoring some special education students and you gain an understanding of IEPs, and how to work with maybe students who have learning disabilities. See, that's what you really want to talk about. Don't just leave it as, you know, you're a part of some tutoring program. Talk about the skill set that you have.
I would say, in addition to everything that was already mentioned by our colleagues, attention to detail and ensuring that you're uploading all of the documents that are listed as required for your application to be considered. There's so many times that we get a great letter of intent, a great resume, but it's missing everything else. So you always want to check, double check, triple check that all of your uploads have been successful. Have somebody, you know, double check it. And if you are having issues, reach out to human resources. There are always HRTs or OA2s. There's always staff that can assist with that. So when in doubt, make a phone call.
Really great tips. Any other thoughts on just the application process before we move on to the next topic from our panel?
We always strongly encourage our student teachers or our colleagues who are already engaged with the district and are working in any type of program to get a principal letter of recommendation, get someone in to observe you in the student teaching role or in your other roles so that they can speak with authority to your performance. The principal letters that are positive carry a lot of weight.
That's a great tip. And then in the chat, someone asked, could we use the same letters of recommendation we use to apply to the intern program? Do you suggest doing that or getting new letters?
I think one of the other panels mentioned it earlier about that personalization piece of it, ensuring that you have the district that you're applying to, that it's addressed that way, and the currency piece of it. So our recommendation in South Bay and with the HR department would be that it is current to the specific to the position you are applying for, as opposed to whom it may concern. The more specific, the better.
And I don't know if those letters are out of date, but generally a lot of districts want it to be within the last year. And so as you're applying for, you know, fall 2024, a lot of the letters usually are going to be around spring, summertime of 2024. And that helps us know that it's relevant. So I do encourage that too.
Excellent. Thank
And
you.
can I just add one last thing? Less is more. So you want to attach the required documents, not the 20 letters that you've gotten in the last 5 years, because then that's just, when you're screening a bunch of positions and a lot of candidates, it's just a lot, you know. So you want to upload your 3 best and most recent for Sweetwater.
All right, we're going to move on to the topic of interviewing. So what are some of the candidate qualities, actions, or responses that are most impressive during an interview?
I'll go back to the specificity of what you are interviewing for, right? Do a little bit of homework, get to know the district, get to know the demographics. Current dashboard data is out, so that's always a great resource to look at and see what areas of strengths and what areas of potential needs may be for the position that you are interviewing for. Also, a lot of the LCAPs are, or all the LCAPs would be on the district website. So just to get an idea of what a district focus is and try to tie that into answering questions. So it shows that you have done some research and homework on the potential student population and demographics that you'll be working with or hoping to work with.
You may occasionally be asked a question that you're not prepared for. Maybe you don't have experience in the space the panel wants to learn more about. I would say, don't ever say, I don't know, and leave it at that. It's great to say something like, well, I haven't had that specific experience, but, I would like to relate how I believe I would handle that, or in a similar situation, I did this and this and this, and I think that with some adjustment would work well here. So always sort of be thinking on your feet and don't get caught up with a non-answer. We're listening and watching not only for how competently you present as just a composed, approachable human, but also how adaptable you are, because as you're learning, teaching is all about sort of going with the flow and adapting in the moment. So if you demonstrate that in the interview, it's very powerful and resonates with the panel.
I very much agree with that. And I was also going to add that it's important to take a deep breath before you start and smile and allow your personality to come through, right? Because a lot of times you have the skill set, you've gone through all the schooling, you've gone through all the classes, but you're nervous, right? So you need to really take a deep breath and prepare how you're going to sell yourself. The first question that's going to be asked on every interview panel is, tell us about yourself and why you think you're the best candidate for this position. So you have to have a quick, concise, really good sales pitch, right? Because you are the best person that knows yourself. So sell yourself. That's your opportunity to show who you are, and what a great new member of our team you would be.
Yeah, totally agree. And to piggyback off Karen, that question's asked because it should be the easiest for you to answer. You're talking about yourself. And what we're hoping is that you're able to do that and calm down at the same time and get those nerves out because you're talking about yourself. Excuse me. I think too, I would recommend bringing a water bottle. Sometimes it's easier to grab a little quick drink of water. It's a good delay tactic while you're trying to formulate your answer. If you take a sip of water and you're thinking about yourself, your answer, and I guess a couple other things I would recommend. Don't bring props. I had someone bring a russet potato, and I was waiting to hear the explanation, and it never came. And that's all I remember about the applicant. I don't remember anything he said in his interview. I've had toys, little figurines brought. So just keep it about you. Keep it professional. Professional dress is important, not because we're looking for stereotypes or labels. I think what dressing professionally shows is a professional judgment, that you understand strategic awareness and situational awareness. So make it look like, yeah, this is important to me. And then my last thing I would say is, usually in an interview, you're going to have somewhere between 5 and 7 themes of the questions. And I think to the point made earlier, if you don't have experience in a certain question, like Amanda was saying, you can usually draw from a different theme that will tie into that situation. So when I say themes, you might have questions on how to work with an IEP team or a special education department, or students with special education needs, or an angry parent question, or some sort of instructional question with differentiation, or an equity question nowadays, cultural awareness, a discipline question in the sense of like PBIS and restorative practices. So these are themes. They might be worded certain ways, but you're going to have certain themes. And then if you don't have a lot of experience with PBIS as a discipline, but you can take your strong instructional approach and kind of, jump to that conclusion as well. So
And then one final thing, if you're not very familiar with all of the acronyms or the systems of support that each school district or school might have, that's part of your homework, right? You're looking at the district to see, oh, this is very much so a restorative practice district. And so if there's a question and RP is used as an acronym, don't get caught off guard with not knowing what RP is, right? But don't be afraid to ask either, and then you can go from there.
Great, thanks. A question that came up in the chat is, are interviews in your district in person or via Zoom?
We've moved to mainly in person, but there are still times we may use Zoom if we're trying to schedule a heavy load of them, or try to be flexible if it's during the school day. So we're a little bit hybrid, but you probably will be expecting in person.
yeah, same for San Marcos. There might be some times where Zoom, but it's mostly in person now. We really want to get to know you, and a lot of that is whatever that is in person, nonverbal communication, or just I think one of the other important things is that when you come into our district to interview, we expect you to be early, but just know that you coming early and sitting in the little waiting room we have in our HR department, your interview has just started. So our team is seeing if you are engaging, if you are saying good morning, if you're just sitting on your phone and not looking up, and then we will ask our team members, hey, was this person, talkative, or did they say anything to you, or were they friendly? So just know that as soon as you walk into our building, your job interview has started. So it's usually in person now.
I love that you made that point, Gary. That's so important. Sometimes our windows are even facing the parking lot. We see everything from the moment you park all the way in. So no, people are noticing. And then for Cajon Valley, we work really hard to do everything in person, but I will share that a lot of the interviewing is going on when people already have these pre-planned vacations in fabulous places. So we will schedule and accommodate, to give a great candidate the opportunity. It's just usually more awkward and hard as reference to get a good sense of a person via Zoom. In person is absolutely the best.
South Bay is the same. We do run into some challenges when it's outside of the student work or the student calendar or teacher work year. So in the summertime, in between the end of the year and the start, sometimes it will be Zoom, but it is primarily in person as well.
Same for Sweetwater.
Excellent, thank you. What is the demeanor, approach, or types of responses that you would caution a candidate to avoid?
I always get uncomfortable or talk about how it's a potential red flag if somebody speaks negatively about some of their experiences or another district. I mean, there's definitely a way to word it where maybe it wasn't a good fit for you somewhere, or though it was challenging, there were still things that you learned and you were able to apply that to your skill set. But be professional and don't speak negatively about other teachers, other staff members, other schools, because everybody has strengths, right? And there's always a growing opportunity wherever you are. And if you're speaking negatively about your experience somewhere, I mean, we're going to start thinking, are you going to speak negatively about us? Or are you going to speak negatively about this interview experience today? And as you know, in education, there's a huge need for positive individuals because you're going to be mentoring very young individuals who are very moldable. And that's part of teaching too. So.
I appreciate that Albert said that. And I think just really remembering that words matter, every single word. And just one way you describe a child can have a connotation for the panel member that leaves them feeling uncomfortable about you. So do make sure that when you're speaking about children, especially if there have been challenging experiences with them or your family, their families that you've navigated, that you really think about how when you want to articulate that you found a powerful way to problem solve and resolve a challenging situation. When you launch into that, you describe the student and the behaviors confidentially and in very positive, education anchored ways. Because if it sounds like you don't believe in all kids, that you don't love all kids, that you don't see the potential in all kids in a really positive way, that will be potentially very off-putting to your panel members.
I'd say too, just be mindful of, we understand that you're going to have a very limited amount of time to try and make a connection with the panel and all the things that are going on at the same time. You have nerves, you're trying to think of content-based responses to questions. It may be a larger panel, so there's some different dynamics there. It may be a group interview and you have multiple applicants and you hear an answer and you think, oh, is that what they're looking for? I was thinking something else. So I'd say be confident in yourself. If you do a group interview, go with your gut on what you think is right, and just be careful of that line of trying to connect with the panel and being professional. So if you're gonna say an offhanded joke or comment, just make sure time and place and relativity of might be something you want to think about.
Great, thanks so much. So move on to thinking about how to best follow up with districts. And so if a candidate has applied for a posted position, but has not yet received an invitation to interview, what should they do?
Our adjoint postings have a point of contact in the HR department. So if you have questions with that, I would refer you to the adjoint posting and the HR personnel who's listed on there, and shoot that person an email to ask where they are in the process would be perfectly acceptable and appropriate in South Bay.
Yeah, to add to that though, I would just make sure you review the application information carefully, because it might say something about when interviews might be scheduled or when to expect a response. And if you don't read that and then you're already reaching out and asking, and then someone has to maybe give you the phrase of per our post or per our email, that might be one of those red flags, because then we might be sensing that you're not somebody that maybe reads things thoroughly. So just be careful about that. It's totally okay to reach out. I'm just encouraging you to make sure you just, before you do it, hey, was there information about this first? Just check that before. That's all.
Yeah, I would agree. And just to add, we will send, I think most districts do this, but we'll send emails if for some reason you didn't get an interview. So the communication will come, and those are pretty scheduled. So we don't miss too many because of how it's set up. But yeah, there'll always be someone you can call if you really need to ask some questions.
Great. After the interview, many candidates believe that they should send a note of thanks to the committee members. Is that important? If so, why is it important? And is a physical note or an email the way to go?
I think a thank you note is always a good thing, but it's not a mandate. I mean, we're not gonna not consider you the next time you apply if you didn't send a thank you note. But I think, it can go a long way sometimes. You might be that person that we were considering as a second choice, and next time you'll be a first.
Well, I want to echo what Karen said. I'm willing to put a lot of money that not all districts, once interviews are done, they're just sitting around waiting to see the first candidate that writes a thank you, and then they're automatically in. We all use an objective process, non-discriminatory, but sending that thank you does keep those connections going, does keep you in consideration if you unfortunately didn't get the interview, in consideration for the future. And it just shows your ability to keep positive relationships, build connections and bridges with school districts. So it's definitely a good practice.
Great answer, Albert.
Right, there's a question from the chat that says, should I apply now or wait till after I've completed pre-service at the end of June? Or is it possible to mention that I am currently in the pre-service program? So they're not yet intern ready, but they're almost there. When should they apply?
Well, Cajon Valley's screening for all positions right now and about to begin hiring. So I would say apply, because if we know where someone is in their process, we may select a candidate and just have to keep tabs pending all the ducks falling in the row, so to speak. But we would absolutely consider someone, even if they're not fully prepared or ready to roll yet. Apply early to be competitive in the pools, depending on what districts you're looking for and what you can determine about their timelines.
I think some credentials I'm sorry, Gary, I keep jumping out in front of you. Depending on your content area, there are higher needs in some than in others. So if you're math or science, we're probably gonna pre-screen and wait for the rest of your documents to come in or special ed. I think that's where there's a high need, but it's always good to have all of your documentation in order as you apply. You'll probably notice that EdJoin pools are open now because we're all trying to screen and interview and get all our ducks in a row, especially like Sweetwater is a modified year round. We start in July, so we need to do our hiring now. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, go ahead and apply now. We'll if we need to follow up questions, we'll do that, but we're looking for the best person. So apply now.
Another participant asked the question, how can we as interns stand out over teachers with full credentials?
I'd suggest you your special ed credential and apply, because there's not a lot of applicant. No, really, it's going to go to the application piece, and as folks had already touched base on the application being thorough, complete, the letters of intent, and looking like that, as Ms. Hernandez shared, those areas of high need of special education, science, math. We're looking for folks all the time, and I would say attention to detail through that application process.
Yeah, and I would add, just stay positive and confident in yourself and your abilities. If you need a little pick me up going against a teacher, sometimes I understand there's some layoffs in certain areas going on, but sometimes just remember there's a reason the teacher's applying too. So you might already have a leg up by background and past history. So just stay positive.
And I think that experience that you bring to the table, right, in other professions or other avenues or jobs that you may have had throughout your life, right, could be an absolute asset. So you think of people who may have been in the military or in the public sector, bring a skill set that folks who went from a credentialing program right out of high school into a teaching program may not have had access to or exposure to. So really look at your past experience as an asset that may be something different than a teacher who has had years and years of an experience in a singleton area. So use that as a relative strength of what you're bringing to the table that a person who has been in the public sector of education for their entire career may not have.
Yeah, and when we're interviewing, we're trying to determine the best fit for the position. And can we imagine this individual taking a classroom, being a leader, being an educational leader for these students? And if someone's a 20-year veteran and they're not answering strongly, and an intern has the right answers, and it seems like this is the individual that's going to be the best for students, like we're not going to be looking back anymore of like, well, is this person an intern or what could, like, it's just this person is going to be the good fit for our kids here, and they're the number one candidate. And so, understand that as you're going in.
Something else to consider, I'm a former high school principal, and sometimes when we were interviewing for a certain department, we were looking at, you know, how would this person fit with that department, right? And so again, your attitude, your personality, your presentation, just allowing us to see who you really are is really important in the interview. So you gotta, like I said, take a deep breath and let us see your true colors.
Yeah, I think just to piggyback off all that was just said, kind of ties in. I was peeking at the chat, and there's someone who asked, "Selling yourself as a mom of three, can I say that?" I think it's a great question, because to the fit piece and to the experience piece, if there's a certain situation with maybe a special education classroom, we might be looking for someone with some life experience with raising kids rather than, you know, a 24-year-old who may not have certain experiences that parents can bring. Parents bring a different perspective to schools and teaching than non-parents do. And it's not better or worse, it's just different. And depending on the fit that Albert was talking about, and Tom, the life experience he was talking about, you know, well, I think how you sell that, three kids, okay, what does that mean? Like the why behind why I'm saying that is important. But yeah, I think that's a great example.
So kind of to piggyback off of some of that experience, if a candidate has years of experience in a different profession, are you looking for the reason for a career switch? And should it be addressed in a letter of introduction or verbally in an interview?
I'll say we're always super curious because it's fascinating. People have really interesting stories. So I think if you're transitioning from one career to another or making a big move, I would say I enjoy reading about that in the letter, and it makes me connect and want to know more. So thinking about sharing those experiences and your why will reassure us that you're a great person making decisions for appropriate reasons, and also just sort of give us the insight as to why you're leaving what sounds like another fabulous job to come into a very rewarding but very challenging profession.
I'll be honest, I think it gives you a leg up. Having that life experience, having to work, especially in the private sector, there's sometimes with applicants, we see it like a little less like entitlement, because you understand, you know, deadlines and bosses. And I think, you know, to Amanda's point, if you can explain the why behind it, then I think that life experience of working outside of public education is extremely valuable.
Great, thank you. What are some specific skills that most districts look for during an interview with a candidate?
I'd say the spirit of collaboration and wanting to work as a team versus in isolation. A lot of times there's a belief that, you know, you're teaching in your classroom, and so you're by yourself in your own little world. But we very much like, you know, teachers to be able to work with professional learning communities so that they can plan together, just so that it all flows better as a school, as a system. So collaboration, adaptability, flexibility are key, you know, characteristics, I think.
Yeah, for us, in addition, be coachable. Teaching, it's very complex, and there's always going to be things to grow on and always new things to learn. And it's not because you're bad at it or that you're poor. It's just because that's how complex teaching is. And so we're really looking for people that want to continuously grow no matter where they are in their journey with education or life.
I think to echo what Karen said, we've been talking a lot about emotional intelligence, durable skills, or the soft skills. And we would choose a person who can really, really engage and feels like they'll do well, not only collaborating and being flexible, but that will be a good partner to parents and will be approachable and comforting for kids while setting appropriate boundaries. You know, there's the magic there that develops in time. We always sort of think those skills, the soft skills, are just what you bring. They aren't things that are as easy to learn. So if we had someone who was very green and maybe didn't have great technical responses, we might choose them based on personality and connection, knowing that they are coachable and that we'll be able to help them grow into whatever position it is they're hired for. So that comes back to the smile, take the deep breath, relax, and really let people imagine you being part of their team, interfacing with every stakeholder on the campus and in the district.
Just to add to that, as Gary said in the beginning, the interview really starts as you pull into the parking lot, right? You never know who's looking out the window. And that can-do attitude, right? The team approach to things, the can-do attitude, asset-based language, and also the organization in time management piece. Education is very structured, right? Students come at a certain time, they end at a certain time. We have a lot of structures throughout the day. So ensuring that you're able to meet deadlines and follow the routines and requirements that are in place with the timelines.
Great. There's a lot of questions in the chat, and I'm going to kind of lump them all together, but people are wondering about those follow-up questions that they might ask. Like, what type of questions are appropriate for them to ask? And then how can they kind of judge, is your district a good fit for them too?
I just gotta say, I'm really curious to hear these answers because you'll get, I think, different. This is where we differ. I think some districts, well, you should be doing your homework. So a question you ask, you better be careful what question because we're interviewing you. Number one, number two, if you ask me something that can be found on a website, I'm gonna wonder how much homework you did, and so sometimes districts will say, we don't really take questions at the end. Some districts do. I will share in San Marcos, it's worded. The last question of the interview is always worded to a closing statement. And that would be like your elevator pitch. You're going to get on an elevator with me at the Hyatt in downtown San Diego. You have 47 floors to sell me on why it's you. And so that takes about a minute. But the closing statement, people have used that to ask questions. But I would just, if you're doing that, yeah, you can tell a lot from a district, again, by their website. Like, we have a strategic promise. So I would just be careful we've gotten some good questions for story time at happy hour, but so just be careful about what those questions are.
We don't really open it up for questions at the end. We ask the final question. We have set time set aside. We let you know how much time you have, and we set a timer and give you a 5-minute warning. So you want to be clear and concise. You want to have examples ready to go. And again, like Gary said, that closing statement is like your last ditch effort to make yourself shine, right? Because you want to leave that lasting impression and you want us to pick you.
I would say if you've done your homework, like Gary was kind of saying, and there's authenticity behind your question, go for it, especially if it's something that's non-negotiable to you. For example, I challenged myself here just now with Sweetwater. I see that at Bonita Vista High School, they have a vision of having their students successfully contribute to a global society. And so if that was a non-negotiable to you, that you believe in project-based learning, that's really service to the community, you might ask them something like, this year, what kind of service projects have been done to contribute to the community? Because that's maybe something that you're really into. And that shows that you know about the school. And it also shows what underlying principles you have as an educator. And now I actually really want, now that I've asked that, like I really want to know that too, because that helps you see how you're going to fit in maybe with the Bonita Vista High staff too. So that's how you can do some of your homework that Gary was talking about. At the same time, make it tie into who you are. And hopefully what you've done in earlier in the review is talk about, the experience you have with community service, how you've gotten your students to serve the community, why that's important to you. So you're wrapping that all in together.
That's a really great example. Thank you, Albert. If I applied and interviewed with a school district months ago and didn't get the position, should I reapply now? Gary's shaking his head yes. So is Amanda.
Yeah, I think I was thinking when I saw this earlier that it's never a bad idea if a district is willing to ask for feedback also to help you learn and grow. Some districts or sites, depending on how the interviewing's going, are happy to get on a phone call and give you just some tips or pointers. But yeah, if that's what you want, as long as you have improved whatever the experience is, or I would say have tried to understand why you weren't the choice so you can perform at the next level, go for it always.
Yeah, great answer. And just to add to that, like Albert, I think said earlier, some of it's fit like time and place and dynamic of the team. And they're looking for a certain skill to round off a team. And maybe that wasn't in the forefront when you applied last time, but now that's kind of more of what they're looking for. Or there's a lot of variables that change over time. So totally agree with everything Amanda says about asking for feedback and keeping at it. Persevere.
Great tips. Is there any other suggestions or tips for interviewing that haven't yet been mentioned that you think are important to share?
I think it's helpful if you have a colleague or a connection to ask someone to do practice or mock interviewing with you. Practicing and thinking about, as Gary described, sort of the themes and preparing yourself for what you're likely going to be asked, while you're driving, while you're doing chores, in the shower, whatever it may be, helps you feel more confident and less nervous when you get to that moment. And so just to share, if any of you are considering Cajon Valley, I didn't look at all the applicant or all of the participants to see. But like for our student teachers, I meet with all of them and I let them know I'll do a mock interview with them, or that they should minimally ask their guide teacher or principal, just so they know what to expect. So it's just a something. If you have a way to reach out to someone, you feel comfortable asking for that, or there is someone in or around the district who has offered that, they mean it, take them up on it, because it's very powerful in helping you prepare and become successful in that interview.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, Amanda. And I would say if you don't have that opportunity or person, Google, teacher interview questions for math secondary positions. Take a look at the top 5 results you get and average out. Okay, out of all the 5 websites I just looked at, they all had this question. So the chances of that question being asked, you have a better chance of that being asked. And then video yourself on your phone. It's very humbling to see all of the ums and uhs and what you are doing while you're thinking to break that silence, those little idiosyncrasies that we all have. I talk with my hands, obviously, you can see them waving around. So videoing yourself is very humbling in that, but it's also a great learning tool, especially if you don't have the feedback of someone else who's willing to do that and with the questions that you can talk through.
I would also, after the interview, jot down on your phone what questions were asked. So you have, if you don't get the position, a lot of our questions are going to be very, very similar. Our first or second questions and last questions are probably going to be the same, and there'll be 3 or 4 in the middle. We talked about themes before, but yeah, jot down after the interview when it's fresh in your head of what was asked, and then use that as a point of reference. And then again, the phone piece and the video recording is a humbling.
Humbling, right? Make sure you're listening to the question carefully. Sometimes they have multiple parts, and we have candidates often who only answer one part. I know it's because they may be nervous, they're looking at a whole panel, but take your time, make sure you answer each component. And then something I struggle with personally, I think ever since applying for like an assistant principal position is if you've not done the role before, it's hard to imagine yourself in the role, and you start talking as if what you would do if you were given the position instead of talking as if you have the position. I hope that makes sense. So speak what you do as an educator, not what you would do, right? So if it's some kind of educational question, talk about your experiences and how you've managed that before and be specific rather than trying to make this hypothetical situation where you're really highlighting the fact that you haven't done it before. So don't focus on the fact that you haven't and focus on the things that you have done. That's really going to help you.
I think that's, yeah, great advice. And something Tom said, just give you a heads up. We're talking about how a lot of what we do is similar, but at the same time, please be flexible and don't get rattled when the differences show up. So I will share for San Marcos Unified, we don't allow you to take notes. So when Tom said write down the questions on your phone or in a notebook, you're gonna have to do that after the interview. So what we explain is that all of the questions you're going to be asked are being asked for your perspective. So it's nothing you should have to write down, or you should just talk about your experience and your perspective. So we don't allow that. So if you just came from a district that allows you to kind of jot down your thoughts and notes, we don't know what you're writing down. We want to keep our questions as private as possible. So we don't have you write down anything. We'll tell you, can you please put that away? And then we don't want to rattle you, but again, and that might be different. You might go to a school district that says, yeah, you can write things down or kind of collect your thoughts or anything like that. But so just don't be rattled when things are a little different, because in San Marcos, it's your perspective, and it's conversation. We don't want you reading from something where we don't get to know you. We don't get that connection. So you don't need to bring much with you. We have your packet. We have all of your ed join stuff, printed out. The panel's seen it. So, but that's just San Marcos. So other districts totally fine if they do that to make you feel comfortable. So just be ready for some changes that way.
And I just need to clarify that piece. I meant after the interview piece. So we don't allow phones and notes. I was thinking after the interview, just a reflection on what that process, that half hour, 20 minutes was like. Yeah, please don't take out a phone in South Bay either, and start jotting that down or writing too many notes. That would be a big no-no. I was, and again, I apologize if I wasn't clear on that, but I was thinking as a reflection component after that interview process. So if you've never interviewed for a position before, as a, hey, what did I do really well? What are some next steps or some things that I would possibly do different if I'm not selected for interview one, and I'm in another district, or interview in the same district at another time, and the questions look somewhat similar. So
they're gonna say Tom said it was okay. Tom said I could take my phone out. Yeah.
There are some logistical questions in the chat too, like wondering how many interviews are normally held. Is it one interview to the position, or is it multiple? How many people are typically on a panel, and should they bring resumes to the interview? So just like logistical stuff.
For Cajon Valley, I would say you don't need to bring something with you unless we've asked you to bring something. You can assume that we have your full application packet and information for all of the panel members. The panel size will vary. It will just depend on what we're hiring for. Sometimes we have, 5 of our 27 sites collaborating and interviewing a few days together to find their future team members. So it could be as big as 10 or 12. If it's site-based, it's usually more like 2 to 5. So it's going to vary a little bit. And then also it depends really on the site and how much, at least for Cajon Valley, people need to drill down. Most often we do a screening interview through Spark Hire at our district level as part of our screening process. So that's a a one-way video where you get your first opportunity to answer questions. Then you'll be called by sites or a collection of sites to interview for their open positions. Usually there's a follow-up, if not integrated right into that interview experience for a demo lesson. And following the demo lesson, if there are still too many strong candidates and a hard choice to make, there will sometimes be one more follow-up interview, but it really comes down to the caliber of candidates and the competition so that we can drill down and make sure we have the best fit for each person involved.
Yeah, I think pretty similar for answer for San Marcos Unified. Let me give you the worst case scenario, and then you can always work backwards from there. So the worst case scenario would be in an elementary school teacher applicant pool. You will have the principals from every elementary school in our district as panel members. So you can do your homework and find out how many that will be. Hint will be it's more than 11, but less than 13. So that's a pretty big panel. And the worst case scenario is that you would be doing a group interview with 2 other applicants. So there are 3 applicants being interviewed at the same time in front of those 12. And you rotate who goes first. So it's fair. Someone's always on the hot seat, and then someone always has a time to collect the answer. And what we're looking for, obviously, is the person who goes second or third, their answer should be a little more succinct and, smooth because you've had time to put it together. Whereas when you're the first one to answer it, we understand you're on the hot seat. So that's the worst case scenario, 12 and a panel 3. And then we, depending on the position, it can be, 3 people on a panel and by, and one lone applicant, which is a little more comfortable usually.
So I haven't been in HR for very long. I've been in it for a year. So I haven't done any of these group panel interviews. Ours are typically 3 to 5 people on the panel, depending on if it's being done at the site or if it's or if they're being conducted at the district and there's a couple of sites. But a big panel can be a little intimidating, but again, if you practice your answers and you have ideas of examples that you want to give, it's going to be a lot easier.
And just about the other logistics, I'll agree that in San Marcos, you don't need to bring anything with you. And yeah, sorry, I can't remember what the other logistical
It's around
question
the number of people in the panel.
and number of interviews. Usually it's only one. If we need to do a follow-up, we can, but that's a good sign. But usually it's just one.
South Bay is the same. One interview for certificated teaching positions. Panels typically are between 4 and 6, and nothing is required to be brought. We oftentimes will accept things if people hand them out, but we don't have that be part of the consideration as we are debriefing the candidates. So there's no need to bring anything.
Great, thanks. So, as I'm sure the panel knows, we have a ed specialist intern program and we have a single subject math and science program. We are hoping that very, very soon our PK3 program will be approved. So some of those potential participants are also in the room tonight. So I want to give you guys a little time to share your elevator pitch as to why our candidates would want to work at your districts or what makes them unique.
Boy, this is when we need to remember all the tips we gave you about not talking bad about our other districts and staying assets based and all that good stuff. So cool. I will just share this. It's going to come down to fit for both the district and the applicant. And so, San Marcos, again, North County. So if you're living somewhere, in South Bay, I don't know if that's a long drive, but hey, great. We accept everybody. And sometimes the drive is decompressing and cathartic. So I will share that for our special education, I think more districts are doing this, but we have both a prep and a consult at the secondary level. So you have 2 off teaching position periods to help with IEPs, paperwork, data collection, things like that. And at the secondary level, how we help with that, since we are a unified district, we have to kind of be equitable, whether you teach pre-K or 12th grade. So your prep minutes are contractually based to kind of mirror that, because there aren't periods during, an elementary school day. So for SPED, I think that's important. I think we try and do a great job of the law says 28 on a caseload. We don't get to that very often. I think we do a good job of monitoring caseload numbers, and our administrators, part of their training to be administrators, go through how to work with our special education teams and the unique needs that they have outside of general ed teachers. So I think that's a focus of ours. Math is valuable, and again, all of our districts are probably looking for math openings. So yeah, that's where I'll stop.
I will say that for working for the Sweetwater Union High School District, you're very much not working in isolation. We have built in PLC time every week, different days for middle schools than high schools, but definitely have them at least once a week, which gives ample opportunity for planning together with your department. We provide lots of built-in professional development through the district as well. We have an incentive that's new for special education teachers. In addition to their prep period, we are paying out a $4,000 stipend a year for that additional time that goes into prepping IEPs. And there's 11 to 13 release days throughout the year for prepping IEPs, and lots of support. We have a school psychologist, depending on the size of the school, sometimes 2 per site, that help support the IEP process as well. And we accept up to 26 years of verifiable teaching service credit from other districts. So I know that's important if you're thinking of moving. And because we are located in the South Bay, if you live in the North County, you're going against traffic. So that's always a plus. I was nice about that.
I think similar to Sweetwater, we have an additional stipend for our special education teachers as far as, also additional release days. We do have a school psychologist assigned to each elementary site, which is pretty impressive at the elementary level. We have some sites that have 400 students in there. In addition, we have counselors to support the SEL component of things. Prior to me taking on the position this year, we had School Services of California came in and did a pretty in-depth analysis of our special education department. And we have a lot of recommendations that came out of that we are moving forward. A couple of the big pieces are of having and prioritizing as students with disabilities, our general education students first, and ensuring that they have access to all programs, and that there is a lot of collaboration between general education and special education, and that we are continually looking for that least restrictive environment component. So special education is not a classroom at the end of the hallway with put your paper over the window and kids are in there for the entire day. And like Sweetwater and the other district, it's a collaborative, community-based place that is small in nature and fun to work at.
In Escondido, we are a little bit smaller, close knit, because we're TK through 8. So, I mean, high school is great, but we don't have them in our district. So that just brings that dynamic there. We really believe in collaboration and technology, both for students and teachers. We provide quite a bit. And because we believe in collaboration, especially with the SPED program, we have special education mentors to help facilitate professional development and provide that level of support, as well as additional collaboration time in our elementary schools. We have an enrichment wheel. So through that, we provide additional collaboration for teams to come together, look at data, work together, in addition to the prep time too. So that's just a way we facilitate additional collaboration amongst our teacher teams to really focus in on our students. And this year we've revamped part of the vision of our district. We come up with something called a student learner profile, where we answer the question, what do we want our students to leave our district knowing and developing as people? And that's going to revamp some of the work we do, and we're very excited about it. It's very new, and it's going to be ongoing and here for a long time. So thank you for listening.
In Cajon Valley, our mission is that we're the best place to live, work, play, and raise a family. And we strive every day to create a caring, belonging environment with high expectations for all students and stakeholders. I like to say that the sweet spot with Cajon is twofold. It's geographical. We're in the middle of everything, and the 8 freeway runs straight through us, which means if you're commuting, you can get to us pretty easily. The other piece is that being bigger, not bigger, mid-sized, we're usually right around 17,000 or just under students. So we're big enough to have a lot of resources, but small enough to still feel intimate. And our superintendent, is a friend to all and very accessible. So there's not a hierarchy in Cajon that keeps you from connecting to people, learning about them, and really getting the supports you need, though everything works for you in an organized manner.
So many great places to work out there. It's really exciting. We are at our time for the evening, in fact, a couple of minutes over. And so I am so thankful to all of our panelists who came to be able to share your insights. I'm sure all of our candidates got lots of great tips and ideas as they embark on really applying and looking for positions. We appreciate Jen Niebly, who shared earlier about resumes and best practices for creating your resumes. I realize that some of you may have had questions that we were yet unable to get to. So if you have lingering questions, please do email intern@sdcoe.net. And we hope you all had a great evening. And thank you all again for coming. Bye-bye.
Thank you.